ladies and gentlemen, let me start by welcoming all of you to our first Retirement Funds Conference, sponsored exclusively by the FSCA. The conference was conceived by our former legal specialist, Mr. Radesh Maharaj, to enable the regulator to engage directly with trustees and for free. As a friend of mine once said, never say no to free and compulsory education. It is a conference where we can directly exchange ideas and views, where you can ask unlimited questions without being time constrained. A conference for us as the regulator to inform you of our workings and expectations, to update you on various local and international developments, and to clarify certain matters. The conference should not be seen as a competitor to the industry association conferences. It should instead be seen as a complement. To do justice to the theme of the conference, I would like to start by briefly taking you through the reform journey embarked by the policymaker, the National Treasury, and regulator over the past years, starting in 2011. So 2008 saw the advent of the global financial crisis. As Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And indeed, the National Treasury seized this moment and published in 2011 a document called A Safer Financial Sector to Serve South Africa Better, which is literally the blueprint for our new Twin Peaks regulatory model. In the same year, the then Financial Services Board announced the Treating Customers Fairly initiative, which is the cornerstone of the new FSCA's regulatory approach. The FSCA came into being on 1 April 2018, together with its twin, the Prudential Authority at the SA Reserve Bank, following the promulgation of the Financial Sector Regulation Act in 2017. The FSCA is the conduct regulator, which means we supervise how financial institutions, including retirement funds, deal with and treat their clients, which includes members of funds. The PA supervises the financial soundness of financial institutions to ensure that they meet their financial commitments to clients. You might ask, why is conduct of financial institutions so important today? Because if you look carefully at the global financial crisis of 2008, its trigger was bad conduct by financial institutions which offered mortgages or bonds to customers who were most likely to default. Some of these customers were not even told that the interest rates would reset to a higher rate in the future. The only slight tweak to our Twin Peaks model compared to other countries is that the FSCA retains both the conduct and prudential supervision of retirement funds, at least for 3 years. I will not steal my boss' thunder, Mr. Dube Chidi, who is going to talk to you later about the origin and evolution of the FSB into the FSCA. Coming back to retirement funds, it is common cause that South African households are struggling to save, with the household saving rate as a percentage of GDP hovering around 0%. Those of us who are lucky to be employed are at least compelled by the employer to save for our retirement. One example where compulsion is good for us. However, we also know that even some of us who are working are not saving enough for retirement. We contribute suboptimally, we do not preserve when changing jobs, we go for retirement products which could be expensive, we do not like taking life annuities, which are meant to protect us from outliving our savings, and we choose high drawdown rates for our living annuities. These challenges led Treasury to come up with various policy proposals, and a lot of them have been effected into law in the last 7 years. From default regulations, tax harmonization and higher tax benefits, enhanced governance provisions in the PFA, enabling members to delay retirement, etc. The framework is now there, and it is for us, the regulator, and most importantly, you as trustees, to give effect to it. I would like to touch a bit on a fairly recent form of economics, which is behavioral economics, which is quite important because it has and continuously tries to give insight into dealing with some of these problems through analyzing human behavior. And its key message is that as humans, we can be inherently and justifiably irrational. Because one, we procrastinate, we have doubts and cannot decide if offered too many choices. Salespersons can take advantage of our ignorance. We excessively focus on short term, and we can be greedy too. So important is behavioral economics that Richard Thaler was awarded the Economics Nobel Prize in 2017. I would strongly encourage you to get his classic book called Nudge. The default regulations which we are currently enforcing and which most of you have adopted were largely fashioned around behavioral economics. Let me now move to the harder issues, cost and value for money. A discussion paper released by the National Treasury in 2013 titled Charges in South African Retirement Funds showed how a regular saver who reduces the charges on his retirement account from 2.5% of assets each year to 0.5% of assets annually would receive a benefit 60% greater at retirement after 40 years, all else being equal. Charges or costs are important, especially in this era of low returns. And I do know how a certain Mr. Stephen Nathan feels about the finalized default regulations, which required a difficult balancing act, especially between active and passive investments. Internationally, especially in America and certain parts of Europe, there has been a growing shift from active managed assets to passive. The research also shows that it is difficult to always beat the market and get alpha, and that most asset managers have struggled to beat the market. Patrick Keynes of MoneyWeb has written extensively on this issue. We should probably be less obsessed with shooting down the lights by trying to always beat the markets. Instead, we should consider aiming for decent long-term growth. Do not get me wrong. Earning a return is still important, and more so earning a return which beats inflation. But it should not be at the expense of everything else or paying too high fees to achieve this. A well-balanced portfolio in various asset classes should be able to yield an optimal outcome. Today, you will hear from some of the best minds when it comes to the important debate on costs. These are experts who are passionate about passive investing, active investing, and a middle ground like smart betas. You will then have to decide which strategy will be best for your funds and members. Linked to this issue is the need for consolidation in the retirement fund industry. At least 1,500 funds are active in our system. There are simply too many funds and too many small funds which are even audit exempt. Retirement funds are about economies of scale. The better the scale, the better the cost, as you are able to spread them among a large number of members. The question still remains how best to achieve such consolidation. And this is the only slight difference between me and my comrade, Mr. Jan Mahlangu. Maybe a good outcome and interim step could be a few number of funds made up of a combination of umbrella funds And let me stress, when we talk umbrella funds, we are not only talking commercial umbrella funds. This could easily include also your bargaining council funds. Large and few medium-sized standalone funds, subject to them demonstrating value for money and good governance. It is also the case that having the right governance in place costs money. So going forward, as part of our new enhanced regulatory approach of being intrusive, intensive, and proactive, we will be looking closely at funds' financial statements to analyze how their costs compare to benchmarks or industry averages. Funds will be asked to explain major deviations from the benchmarks. Let me now address you much more directly as trustees in relation to your conduct. I have always said that being a trustee is a difficult job. I therefore truly commend you for the courage you have. But my boss, Mr. Dubechidi, recently asked me a simple but very profound question, which he said every trustee must ask themselves: am I trustworthy? Can I be trusted with other people's money and livelihood? Because if I'm not, I should never raise my hand to be a trustee. We should be frank with one another. There are trustees who have failed and are failing their funds and members. These failings could be attributed to lack of sufficient and regular training and skilling, lack of integrity, which no formal education can teach you, by the way, lack of proper judgment, which links to over-reliance on consultants and asset managers. Remember that as trustees, as much as you can seek expert advice, and you are encouraged to do so, you are still required to make the final decision on that advice. Whenever a financial institution fails, the regulator is quickly blamed, and maybe fairly so, given our role. The reality is that the regulator does not manage or run financial institutions. This role and duty is left to the directors and trustees of firms and funds. As the regulator, we rely on you to not comply with the law. Sorry, we rely on you to comply with the law. Terrible mistake. It was meant to be a joke. But then you must always ask yourself, what is in the best interest of the fund and its members? Put the member at the heart of every thought, decision, and action you take. And please remember, it is not your money but someone's money. This applies also to service providers, whether they are asset managers, administrators, or insurers. We have issued Directive 8 to stop gratification and undue influence on you by service providers, because we have records of how such behavior can lead to conflict of interest and compromise member savings. Trust me, we are monitoring compliance, and you will be called upon to account. You should also not be scared to whistleblow, because we cannot visit all the funds at the same time. We therefore rely on you to assist us, and will treat the information carefully with the necessary confidentiality. We are busy finalizing the standard on the FSCA Trustee Toolkit to at least assist you with acquiring free and compulsory education. You can always supplement this. Let me come to transformation. And it will be remiss of us not to talk about transformation. We all know our history as a country, the legacy of which still lingers to a certain extent. However, we now have 25 years after our first democratic election, and therefore we should be seeing reasonable progress on some of our critical societal and economic objectives, like attaining a more fair, equal, and just society. But we must also understand human history and dynamics. Man has always fought for limited resources to ensure his survival. Unfortunately, taken to the extreme, this leads to wars, hatred, oppression, discrimination, and environmental damage. One of the biggest dangers in any society is having someone who has nothing to lose, because they will make everyone worse off. It is therefore imperative that we cherish diversity everywhere. For example, the inclusion of women on boards and as asset managers locally and globally is as important as any other inclusion. Research has shown how diverse boards are able to make better decisions. We also need to blend youth and experience. We need to consider how incubation can assist us in bringing to the industry new asset managers to enable a balanced distribution of asset management which reflects the demographics. Bearing in mind that this also means enabling our future competitors. However, this must also be said. We are dealing with long-term savings here. We are dealing with sacrifices workers are making every day to get a decent income in retirement. We therefore need to do the right thing with other people's money. We need to show a higher care than we would with our own money and do things properly. We need to adhere to high standards in the products and services we deliver and not lower them for historical or transformational reasons. Responsible investing. Milton Friedman, another Nobel laureate, famously said, the only purpose of a company or its directors is to maximize wealth or profits for its shareholders. As with everything in life, take this saying or postulate to its extreme, you will end up with unfortunate outcomes. To its extreme, it means extracting as much value out of workers without fair compensation or time to rest. To its extreme, it means overpricing products. To its extreme, it justifies greed. To its extreme, it means excessive exploitation of the planet. The only one so far we know supports life. To its extreme, life itself could be threatened, and probably is already threatened if one goes with recent recorded climate anomalies. Balance is therefore key. The returns that companies make are the returns your funds earn and therefore your members benefit from. There is nothing wrong with making a financial return, as long as it is made sustainably and does not hurt anyone in the process. The sole pursuit of return is now very, very old economics. There will be nothing to enjoy with that excessive return if there is no planet to grow fruit, extract raw materials to produce various commodities we so much rely on for our daily existence and indulgence. Trustees, you therefore need to understand and appreciate your critical role in this world. The world is in a precarious situation. We have relatively evolved from seeing unfair discrimination as normal. We have relatively evolved from tolerating the abuse of animals because we realize we have no right to ill-treat something we have not created. We have become impatient with greed, which brings down markets, causes economic depressions, and job losses. As trustees, you must take a stand and do what is right. You should ask yourselves, do I want to retire in a wasteland? And maybe this is extreme. Ask yourself, do I want to retire in a society grossly unequal, lacking proper infrastructure to enable safe and cheap commuting for myself and grandchildren? Do I want to retire in a country where big corporates collapse because of fraud or mismanagement or governance failures? Don't say you will cross the bridge when you get to it, because you might not even get to the bridge. So be active asset owners. Ask questions of the asset managers and the companies they invest in. You give them the money and the mandate. It has never and should never be the other way around. It is your mandate that asset managers should carry out. And responsible investing does not and will never mean charity or suboptimal investing. It also doesn't mean allocating 10% in green bonds or infrastructure and saying you have achieved responsible investing. No. Regulation 28-2C10 and Guidance Notice 1 of 2019 on sustainable investments are very clear. You must assess that all, and I stress all, the investments you make, the asset classes you are in, are sustainable. Although not specified in the guidance, we are expecting funds to start reporting on their responsible investment approach in their next financial years. Please do not say guidance notice is simply a guidance and therefore you will implement once it is obligatory. That will be a travesty. Reg 28-2C10 already requires you to consider ESG. The guidance tries to help you to comply with Reg 28. As a society, we should not always be compelled to do what is right. Inculcate in yourselves as trustees the culture to do the right thing without having to be compelled or punished for not doing right. I was thinking of getting off the stage as I get to my next item, which is prescribed assets. So you have all seen the debates in the recent months, and particularly this week. This is a topical issue. It's probably not going to go away easily. And the arguments presented against prescribed assets have been sufficiently ventilated in the public. It remains my view that it might not be necessary to reintroduce prescribed assets. Instead, we would prefer that the regulator be given an opportunity to nudge the industry into supporting the initiative to kickstart the economy through investments in infrastructure and other factors of production. And I should tell you, I was in a meeting, and I think Dr. Divet was in the same meeting, where a senior, very senior politician was present, and I mentioned the concept of nudging. And she looked at me and said, "You know, Olano, we are getting a bit tired with your nudging approach, because you have been nudging for the last 25 years. And it's probably a fair point, but I would still like us to give it a chance. I would still like us to give it a chance, and if indeed it proves to be a total failure, then we can consider other options. I'm not convinced at this stage we need to adopt a hard line like prescribed assets. But again, it's upon you as trustees to take the initiative and start addressing some of these concerns. The other not so often spoken of real danger of prescription is that if something goes wrong with that asset, then it will be easy for the prescriber to be used as a scapegoat. Linked to this, it would also provide you as trustees with an excuse, if not reason, to not exercise your fiduciary duties. The PFA has left the decision on how best to invest the fund's assets in your hands as trustees. This is too important an issue for you as funds and your associations to be quiet about. At least express a view. Let me move to international and local market developments, because part of the session is just to give you a sense of what's happening around you and globally. So South Africa is privileged to be part of the International Organization of Pension Supervisors. Trust me, the same issues we are grappling with locally are also being discussed internationally. Issues around ESG are receiving great prominence, and IOPS will soon be releasing guidance on this. There is also an attempt to encourage industry to come up with new generation annuities, which will give members both worlds, that is longevity protection and flexibility. Even internationally, retirees are not keen on life annuities. It is seen as a grudge payment. South Africa has recently enabled the inclusion of hybrid annuities as part of the default regulations to encourage members to annuitize and not default to taking their savings as a lump sum cash. The economy is also struggling. We see companies closing down. However, to deduct contributions from members' salary and not pay them over into the fund is a crime in terms of the Pension Funds Act. A crime which also pierces the corporate veil, meaning that as funds, as trustees, you can take the directors of that company or municipalities to court for such an offense. And I suppose this is easier said than done, because as trustees, you probably worry about the repercussions of taking your employer to court. You do, though, have a duty to enforce this law. We are also engaging with SARS and other law enforcement agencies on how we can assist trustees in enforcing Section 13A, which deals with contributions, and have received encouraging feedback. As trustees, you should not hesitate to put the employer on notice when it comes to arrear contributions. For the employer, the regulator's appeal is that engage with the trustees and workers when you experience financial difficulties, so that you can reach some arrangement if possible, rather than making deductions and not paying them over to the fund. Terminating funds. We issued Information Circular number 1 this year, informing the industry on what we expect when it comes to terminating dormant funds. I must say, we do need to deregister a number of funds which are dormant, as they simply add clutter to the system and divert regulatory resources. All we need to ensure is that such termination does not entail funds which have assets. It is common cause now that the regulator relied on incorrect information from service providers to make its decisions. Errors will be made, and the aim is to keep them minimal throughout the chain. And if indeed mistakes happen, they will be corrected. We are tightening the process, and hence our request to the auditing profession to assist us in checking to the best of their ability that funds applying for termination do not have assets in them. We have also internally reorganized ourselves to have a team which will assess such applications so that the burden does not fall on one person. I'm again appealing to all insurers and administrators to please come forward if you discover that there might be funds you applied for termination in error. You don't want to be caught out. Unclaimed benefits. So the latest value, as most of you would be aware, sits at around 42 billion rands. This money rightfully belongs to workers who contributed to retirement funds and or to their dependents. And therefore, all efforts must be made by funds, insurance companies, and administrators to trace them. However, there is also the reality that not all beneficiaries will be traced, because some might have passed on or went back to their home countries. Unclaimed benefits are really a tragedy of history and the migrant labor system South Africa had in the past. People conceal their true identities just to be employed in South Africa. People did not have ID numbers. In fact, there are records which literally record zeros for the entire ID number. Employers did not provide information to their employees, and some employees did not share information with their spouses. And I should repeat this. Some employees did not share information with their spouses, something which unfortunately persists to this day. At some point, we will need a policy direction on what to do with unclaimed benefits. We know it will be near impossible to trace beneficiaries, because for so long as that amount sits in the various funds, it creates all sorts of issues. Administrators probably also did not invest sufficiently in their data systems. If you have incorrect data, you will struggle to make correct calculations of a member's benefits. Worse, you will struggle to even locate them. And maybe we have been too focused on the fees charged by asset managers and neglected the important role played by administrators in the system. We are also considering adopting the principle of KYC, so know your client, for retirement funds. This is an important principle which should be applied to every financial entity, including retirement funds. It will assist with ensuring that employers and funds, when they onboard workers or members, obtain the right details about them and constantly update such information. And honestly, even the least income paid person in South Africa has a cell phone, and we hardly change our cell numbers. We have also been sensitized to the vexed issue of Section 37C, which deals with the distribution of retirement benefits upon death of a member. Last month, I requested your associations, BATSETA and the IRFA, and the Pension Lawyers Association, to work together and advise the regulator what are the practical challenges with the provision and how they can be overcome, including also possible legislative amendments. On litigation, can you please tone down on litigation, especially against the regulator? It is particularly rude to take the regulator to court. And unless if we have done something terribly wrong, I'm urging you to really, really restrain yourselves from excessive litigation. We are always open to discussion and to answer questions where appropriate. But of course, not where you have flouted the laws. There is a lot of frivolous litigation which ultimately is a cost to the fund and its members. Section 14 delays. Say, am I still okay with time? No, I have to. So I've also been very disheartened by the number of applications I receive from your funds requesting extensions and further extensions in relation to Section 14 transfers. I do understand to a certain extent that part of the challenge is the missing tax directives, which also talks to missing tax numbers when you onboard employees. The process of transferring members takes too long, and therefore not fair on members and the regulator. Unfortunately, many of you abuse the 180 and 60 days periods in the PFA. We are starting to reject many of these extension requests, and are also now considering proposing to the policymaker the reduction of these periods. The FSCA is going to be very intrusive, and it is going to make some of you very uncomfortable. We are going to ask uncomfortable questions. Delays in submitting statutory returns and reports will attract penalties. And as you would know by now, the penalty sits at 4,000 per day for non-compliance. And you will have to explain to your members why you did not perform your duties properly or in time. Do not try to hide behind the point that a penalty reduces a member's benefits. You must account to them why you have been penalized. However, we also accept as the FSCA that there are certain things we can do better. Nobody likes criticism. Even when they tell you, they welcome it. It is human nature. Please do provide us with constructive criticism. If you feel we delay in our responses or that certain matters are taking too long to address, give us the opportunity to explain, and where we cannot, we will own up. Your feedback will assist us in becoming a better regulator. But please do not be rude, aggressive, and patronizing in your comments and criticism. We will treat you with respect, and we ask the same of you too. We will take action against you if evidence confirms infringement, and this will be done without fear, favor, and prejudice. So to conclude, let me say something I've said in the past, that our retirement system is not broken, and we should not break things which work, even if they work suboptimally. There are some cracks in the system, and I believe this can be fixed. Let me take this opportunity to thank you all for attending. It's really a great privilege and honor to see so many of you in our inaugural conference. The conference was literally oversubscribed on the first day, and there are people out there who are very aggrieved that they were never given the opportunity to participate. So it's really an honor to be having you in this hall. To specifically also thank the speakers who have sacrificed their time and borne the cost of traveling to be part of us, Dr. Suzanne Divert, Mr. Malcolm Fair. Unfortunately, Ms. Monique Mateus-Graaf could not be with us, but Mr. Brenton Lalu has managed to join us. Ms. Mabatu Seiso, Mr. Rowan Berger, Mr. Stephen Nathan, Ms. Keshni Totram, Ms. Nerina Fesser, Ms. Fatima Vada, Mr. Komutso Ramukala, and Comrade Mr. Mahlangu. Mr. Leon Kempfer and Ms. Fiona Rolson. I truly appreciate your assistance and presence. Special thanks to the presence of the National Treasury too, who have been with us in this long reform journey. To the FSCA team, the Retirement Funds Supervision team, our communications team, and because I'm not going to have another opportunity today, thank you very much. And to Mr. Nahim Isop, who has been coordinating the entire project, thank you. You have all, irrespective of positions and rank, put a lot of excellent effort into this process, and I'm truly grateful, irrespective of how the event turns out later. I am tempted to say bonuses are in order this year, but that will be pushing things too far. Maybe I can consider half a day tomorrow. So thank you so much. Please enjoy the rest of the day. We will be around for the entire day. We'll spend the entire day literally with you. So thank you so much. Much appreciated.